sola. Si también estás triste y si los fines de semana algún hombre te desviste. Pregunto si quisiste ser eso que eres. Pierdes la cabeza por licor, droga y mujeres. Dime si me quieres, nena, o si prefieres optar por el odio y por sus súbitos placeres. Vives pero mueres, ¿cómo es tu pena? ¿Cuál es la canción que cantan las sirenas? ¿Cuál es la opinión de la moral en las escuelas? Hoy quiero saber dónde está la chica que vuela. Las tortugas que esperan, ¿en quién deben creer? ¿Qué de la religión si Dios fuera mujer? ¿Cuál será el color de mi último anochecer? Y si el mundo no lo cambia el amor, ¿qué lo puede hacer?
Dios. Bla 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 bla. Dios. Bla 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 bla. Listo.
¿Qué tan románticos pueden ser los nudillos? ¿Cuál es la parte más sexy de los tobillos? ¿Dónde viven las cigüeñas que traen los niños? Porque algunos buscan el amor en los bolsillos. ¿Quieres venir conmigo? Que es la vida sin excesos. ¿Qué tal una vuelta a tu ombligo en 80 pesos? Yo pongo mis versos, ¿tú qué propones? ¿Quieres volverme loco, verdad? Con esos tacones que hay en tus oraciones. ¿A qué te aferras? Científicos de fiesta, poetas en la guerra. La oscuridad te aterra. Echas a alguien de menos. ¿Qué regla prohíbe a los poetas más obscenos? ¿Quieres desenfreno y un amante alucinante? ¿Qué es más valioso, un brillante o un diamante? ¿Cómo quieres que cante? ¿Qué me quieres decir? Por amor, ¿qué mandamiento no quieres cumplir? Porque suele ser abril, un triste mes. Iremos en Cadillac hasta la luna alguna vez. ¿Prefieres lucidez o sin luz algún desliz? ¿Quieres vivir como un genio? ¿Quieres vivir feliz? ¿Sueñas con una actriz? ¿Amas con el corazón?
¿Cuál es el color favorito del camarón?
Que Jay-Z es masón.
Vamos a dejar esto.
Claro que amo más al rap que a ti, ¿por qué preguntas?
Así si alguien escribe, se puede ver perfectamente. Ok. Vamos a continuar con las cajas torácicas. ¿Será que pongo boleros? Es que igual tienen altos temazos de boleros. Justo a uno le escriben en el peor momento. Tiré algo. Ok, no pasa nada.
Y cómo no, eso de que el mundo está hecho de átomos. Sí, sí. El mundo no está hecho de átomos, el mundo está hecho de historias. Porque son las historias. Las historias que uno cuenta, que uno escucha, que uno recrea, que uno multiplica. Son las historias las que permiten.
Esto debería estar más para acá.
Pasado del presente.
Antes de morir quiero volver a creer, volver a enloquecer por alguien y enamorarme. Seguramente volveré a caer allí, besaré la tierra negra y
volveré a pararme.
Que cada día sea el primero del resto. El truco está en estar bromeando aunque me encuentre
molesto.
molesto. Yo voy a jugarme cada dólar por esto. Más flows, más honesto. Quiero viajar y conocer lugares increíbles. Hacer del café de tus
ojos mi combustible.
De mis besos un convertible que conduzca y luzca en busca de tu brusca boca imposible. Yo quiero ser libre y feliz con lo que hago. Ir con la banda a tocar en un bar de blues
en Chicago.
Hoy pido otro trago para toda la orquesta.
¿Para qué mesa me dijo? Para la nuestra.
Antes de morir necesito una fiesta, un beso, una siesta,
una noche como esta. Antes de morir necesito una respuesta, una canción honesta, un romance a la nuestra.
Antes de morir necesito una fiesta, un Beso una siesta, una noche como esta. Antes de morir necesito una respuesta, una canción honesta, un romance a la nuestra.
Sí.
Antes de morir contaré mis secretos, los más ingenuos y los más perversos, que mi intención no fue llegar a esto, mi inquietud de
Volarme los sesos y en cada momento
vivirlo fuego adentro, sin importar si me quemo o me muero.
es la soledad a lo que más le temo,
Y pasar mis días
sin sentir ni un solo beso.
Antes de morir necesito una fiesta, un beso, una siesta, una
Noche como esta, antes de morir necesito una respuesta, una canción honesta, un romance a la nuestra.
Antes de morir necesito una fiesta, un beso, una siesta.
Una noche como esta, antes de morir necesito una respuesta, una canción honesta, un romance a la nuestra.
Antes de morir quiero dejar de estar triste, y si ya es muy tarde quiero morir de la risa. Voy a extraviar mis cosquillas.
Ok, creo que ya podría pasar a la pelvis. Tengo una idea buena de la caja torácica. Ahora sigue la pelvis. Hay algunos de ese carro. No, sí, mejor me chungo.
Quiero caerme bien, contarme un buen chiste y perdonarme por dejarte hacer todo
Lo que me hiciste.
antes de morir. Quiero vivir
A ver, la
sin afán
pelvis.
y ser fan de mi gente antes de ser un rockstar man.
Hay varias formas de descomponerla.
Beso una siesta, una noche como esta. Antes de morir necesito una respuesta, una canción honesta, un romance a la nuestra. Antes de morir
Pero me
necesito
vestí.
una fiesta, un beso, una siesta, una noche como esta. Antes de morir necesito una respuesta, una canción honesta, un romance a la nuestra. Antes de morir.
Vamos a pasear juntos.
Se trata de ir siempre hacia adelante.
Llena el aire y para amar. Cuente con nosotros.
Antes de morir necesito una fiesta.
Necesito una fiesta,
Antes de morir necesito una respuesta.
una respuesta.
Antes de morir necesito una
Antes de morir,
fiesta.
un beso,
Antes de morir
una
necesito
respuesta.
una respuesta, una canción honesta, un romance a la nuestra.
Una noche como esta.
Y las que también permiten convertir lo distante en cercano.
Oye, me la arreglan.
Dale vuelta.
Ya,
Ahí está.
¿dónde está papi?
¿Dónde la dejaste? Justo ahí. Ahí está. Hágale.
Salí a la puerta del gato y atrás de la puerta.
Estuve pensando en ti hasta que en el cielo amanece. Hice daño a quien quería y luego lo pagué con creces. Solo he bloqueado meses pensando escribir sandeces, mirando al techo y sintiendo cómo envejeces, cómo adormece el encanto de un beso dado y que en un día puede nacer de un buen hombre, un hombre malvado. Dijeron que era rosado, cruci con un flow muerto. Debe ser la única vez que dijeron de mí algo cierto. Yo descubrí que a la vuelta de la esquina si quieren enamorar. Lo malo es que no sé de cuál cansado de llorar, solo me busqué un amigo para descubrir que solo puedo contar con mi ombligo. Y dimensiones a tu cuerpo y dimensiones el error de dejar pasar las 7 dimensiones del amor. También sentí dolor más allá de lo físico y perdí la química al verte volar con químicos. Intenté ser cómico con una antología de bromas que solo querían darle alegría a tu día. Fui todo un vampiro y de mí suspiro a la penuria, casi un kamikaze chocando con la lujuria y la seducción de tu imaginación. Me partieron la cara y también el corazón. Ya le hablé con amor a esos corazones de roca. para llegar aquí y besarte la boca. Por besarte la boca, por besarte la boca y por volver a sentir como tus labios me tocan. Por besarte la boca, por besarte la boca mientras tú de esperanza me provocas. Por besarte la boca, por besarte la boca y por volver a sentir como tus labios me tocan. Por besarte la boca, por besarte la boca mientras tú y mientras yo. Con seguridad lo repetiría todo. Enfatizaría en estar jodidamente triste y solo. Mordería de nuevo mis codos con rabia y malgastaría en desencanto los encantos de mi labia. Y ya que lo preguntas también dejaría en un andén el llanto que causó una chica infiel. Volvería a ganar, me encargaría de perder y flotaría una vez más en ese cóctel de miel con hiel. Te haría llorar de placer, trabajaría por ser el porcentaje aquel que en tu piel querías tener. Volvería a creer antes de caer sin calma y sin dudar. Cambiaría de lugar los sofás de mi alma. Si la fuerza me falta, vuelvo y respiro, me inspiro, te miro, transpiro, escribo y tiro un suspiro. De nuevo deliro, te amo, te extraño y te duelo. Te veo, te bebo, te deseo, te miento y te celo. Tomaré a tu pelo y ahí va otro anhelo, otro caramelo agrio que tiraste de señuelo. Y lo mordería otra vez, hasta otra vez hostigarme. Escribiría y escribiría hasta otra vez calmarme. Chocaría contra paredes, perdería mi lucidez. Volvería al boxeo, al coqueteo y al ajedrez para ver si me beso otra vez con el alma rota y me provocas de esperanza mientras me besas la boca. Besarte la boca, por besarte la boca, por besarte la boca, mientras tú y mientras yo, por besarte la boca, por besarte la boca, por besarte la boca otra vez, por besarte la boca, por besarte la boca y por volver a sentir como tus labios me tocan. Por besarte la boca, por besarte la boca mientras tú de esperanza me provocas. Por besarte la boca, por besarte la boca y por volver a sentir como tus labios me tocan. Por besarte la boca, por besarte la boca mientras tú y mientras yo.
Ay, Dios mío, mi espalda. Ok. Yeah.
Ya conocí esos amores volátiles, fríos, fugaces, fáciles, fingidos, filosos y
Frágiles, ya conocí esos amores acelerados.
con besos de envases y roces atropellados. Amores vedados, amores urgentes, amores accidentales y otros intermitentes. Ya conocí amores secretos e imposibles, pero ¿qué tal si tú y yo hacemos de este uno increíble?
Dios, está jodido prender la vela.
Para escondernos, ponte a mis pies para escaparnos y bésame, que solo el amor podrá salvarnos. Es un... Dame tu test para escondernos, ponte a mis pies para escaparnos y bésame, que solo el amor podrá salvarnos.
Yeah.
De esos que ya no se ven, ven y bésame despacio que tu boca se le den. Y ámame más esos días en que soy menos, como John Coltrane, nena. Un amor supremo, unos sin gritos, sin ira, sin amores pasados. Dame la paz que ninguna chica me ha dado. Yo quiero estar a tu lado y escribir mi historia. Quiero aprenderme tu perfil
De memoria.
y quiero ser tu droga, tu doctor anatomía, tus noches hardcore, tus buenos días. Sé que no soy tuyo, que tú no eres mía y te puedes zafar cuando no sientas alegría. No quiero ser melancolía ni enojo, ni ser tu amigo porque no puedo verte con esos ojos. Te quiero sin ser rojos, sin frases de cajón. Guardemos los te amo para una gran ocasión. Dame tu test para escondernos, ponte a mis pies para escapar.
Ah, espérate, creo que me faltan categorías. Después de asaltar un banco.
Déjame pedir perdón por los gritos que otros te han hecho. Sé mi rock and love, no mi rock and roll. Toma horas de mí, dame tiempo a solas. Dime por qué lloras, sé mi dinamita. Quien inspira lo que escribe una actriz porno.
Ah, creo que las ponen aquí abajo, ¿no? Con hashtag youtuber, porque fuck it. Dibujo, drawing.
Dame tus manos, deja que te cuide. Y si ya no me sientes más, vete, pero no me olvides. Dame luces para escondernos, ponte mis pies para escaparnos. Y bésame, que solo el amor podrá salvarnos. Es un... Dame luces para escondernos, ponte mis pies para escaparnos. Y bésame, que
Sí, creo que ahí está bien.
podrá salvarnos. Ya conocí esos amores volátiles, fríos, fugaces, fáciles, fingidos, filosos y frágiles. Ya conocí esos amores
Amores acelerados.
besos de envases y rosas atropellados, amores vendados, amores
No, no es
urgentes,
esto.
amores accidentales y otros intermitentes. Ya conocí amores secretos e imposibles, pero tú, nena, dame un rock and roll. Rock and roll. Rock and roll. Rock and roll, pero tú, nena, ven y dame un rock and roll. Rock and roll. Rock and roll. Pero tú, nena, ven y dame un rock and roll.
A ver. La pelvis. Veamos cómo te partimos. ¿Cuáles eran las dimensiones de la pelvis? Anatomy for Sculptors. Tú no, tú no, tú no, tú no, tú no, tú no. ¿Dónde estás? Ya lo cerré. Aquí está. Pelvis. Me gustaría hacer una distinción. Todo esto lo dejaré para cajas después, así que utilizaré un nuevo frame. A ver. Primeramente medidas. En el anterior lo había hecho como... Una cabeza de alto. Ok. Y tenemos 1.2 cabezas de ancho. Igual que el torso. de lado. De 0.7, upa. Bastante delgada. Ok. Ok. Se ve bien. Ok, si no lo puedo hacer más pequeño. Esto no lo puedo comparar como con proporción. A ver, veamos. Bueno, igual todo esto es traducible a las proporciones que use. Si no cuenta. Bueno, dejémoslo ahí. Mark tenía un video donde le explicaba. Sí, es este. No, te preocupes. Sí, pero ¿cuáles eran las medidas? Desde el centro, ¿qué es esto? 1/3. Corta por, parece ser la mitad. Ah, también lo corta aquí. Entonces por la parte de atrás ha de ser como planito. Trilimo del pelvis, perfecto. A ver, ¿dónde está esto? Fantástico, no me deja de esta forma. Ahora sí. Imágenes de la tarea, Proco How to Draw, Proco Anatomy, Subscribe. ¿Esto en qué parte está?
Download a few screenshots from the link in the description below. Then, after you did whatever you want, and draw it the way I described in this video. start with the bucket, cut out a wedge, and then draw the
Ya tengo las medidas, no me será más necesario. 3D model, the pelvis. The pelvis. Draw. Quiero la versión simplificada. No, pero esto solo es la pelvis.
How's it going, everyone? I hope you're all doing good. Welcome to another study session in which I'm going to be explaining how to draw the pelvis on any angle from your imagination. Now, I covered all of its anatomical detail in the previous video, so be sure to watch that first if you haven't already. The pelvis is one of the most complex features of the human skeleton, so it can be challenging to draw. At least I found it a lot harder to understand in comparison to what I've covered up to this point, but do not worry, because I'm going to attempt to simplify its form, making it easier to draw from imagination on any angle in perspective. So the first thing I'm drawing in my sketchbook here are 4 separate views of the pelvis in all of its detail, and here I was referring to an online 3D model of the pelvis as I was drawing these, something that I did a lot in the last session. Again, if you haven't watched that, I recommend you do so before watching this one, because then you'll be more familiar with the pelvis and know what it is you are trying to draw. Now, the reason that I'm drawing these out in detail like so is because next to each one of these, I'm going to eventually draw a stripped down and simplified view of the pelvis on the same angle, so that I'll be able to compare both the detailed view and the simplified view, seeing how it can be reduced down to a more manageable form for us to draw. Of course, at the moment I'm just drawing these on a front, side, back and top down view, but later on I'll be drawing these on different angles as well. So here I have 4 views of the pelvis drawn out, but before I go ahead and start drawing the simplified views, I should probably talk about how I'll be approaching this. Now, for those that might not know, these study sessions are also a means for me to teach myself whilst helping others who are also looking to learn as well. And whenever I'm tasked with learning something new, I scour the internet searching for answers, and so when I searched up how to draw the pelvis, I found a few methods to do so. One of them was from watching Proko. I feel like there's not an episode that goes by where I don't refer to his content because it's very useful. Anyways, in Proko's video on how to draw the pelvis, he uses a method inspired by Gottfried Barms, which involves drawing out a simplified form in the shape of a bucket, and then this is developed further as he cuts out a section at the front to leave him with a form that works as a template to then draw a more detailed pelvis. I say a more detailed pelvis, but it is still reduced down to a more geometric-like shape with hard edges and corners, and from my experience, these types of forms are a lot easier to draw in perspective in comparison to curved and rounded forms, like the pelvis. Regardless, the pelvis that is drawn within this bucket still does well to represent the pelvis, defining its anatomical features and landmarks that we discussed in the previous session. It seems like this is the most practical approach, or at least it's a good place to start. I see a lot of artists using just boxes as a means of blocking out the position of features in perspective, but I think that's something that I'll be doing later down the line. For now, I decided to try out this bucket method and wanted to start by drawing out only this bucket form to become comfortable doing so before attempting to draw the pelvis. So here what I'm going to do is draw this bucket, rotating it around so that I can familiarise myself with it. Here I'll draw this first row in the centre, as if I was looking directly at the bucket as it rotates around. I'll then draw a row above so that I am looking up at it from below, and then I'll do the opposite to that and draw another row of them below, looking down at them from above. whilst I draw all of this out on screen here, I'm going to discuss this bucket because there's a few important notes that I'd like to make. One of them is that this isn't actually in the shape of a bucket, and Procode does mention this in his own video, but I still found myself confused in terms of its form, because this is referred to as a bucket, and so I assumed that, let's say from a top-down view, that it would be a perfect circle, tapering down to a smaller circle at the bottom. But that's not actually the case. This is more of a squashed bucket, if anything, because from a top-down view, it's an oval. And the same goes for the bottom. It's wider than it is in length, and you'll see what I mean in a moment when I draw this from a few more angles. Another point to make about the shape of this bucket is the fact that it seems to be more angled at the back, as if that lower oval has been pushed forward more. Sometimes this is hard to tell when you see it drawn in perspective. And finally, to make it a little more confusing, the bucket tilts forward, similar to the pelvis, obviously. And so those are a few things to consider if you are drawing the bucket like I am here. Of course, we also cut out a wedge at the front of the bucket, and this is about 2/3 of the oval's front half. It's cut halfway down the bucket. Procode does a nice job of explaining the steps involved in doing this, so be sure to watch his video as well. Anyways, as you can see here, I am making some progress with these buckets. I think the reason why this is still quite hard to understand is the fact that when it's drawn on certain angles, it does look like as if it would be that standard circular bucket shape. It's hard to tell that it's wider in size, but of course that makes sense when you take a look at the shape of a pelvis, which is also wider. So now I have 3 rows of these buckets on different angles, and I'm becoming more familiar with its form, but I'm going to continue constructing this on a few more angles until I can confidently draw them out from my imagination. I think the reason why this approach makes it so much easier is because these lines that I draw when constructing the bucket help me place it in perspective. I can look at the direction of the lines that I place across the top face of the bucket and draw them out on the bottom face also. The hardest part for me, and this is something you will be aware of if you've watched any of my videos on perspective drawing, is drawing the ellipses. In fact, these ellipses that I draw for this bucket are more compressed. An ellipse is a circle in perspective, but we know that this is an oval, not a circle, and so all of that makes it harder to draw. But again, as long as it looks correct, I'd just go with it. I am also practicing as well here. It's not like I've drawn many of these out before, and that's the reason why I think these study sessions are valuable to others looking to learn, because we are essentially in the same boat, right? I am learning all of this with you, and that's why I also refer to other teachers' work such as Proco or many of the how to draw books that I learn from. So here I have several of these buckets drawn out on varying angles, and I think I'm getting used to drawing these now. And so now I'm going to come back to these 4 views of the pelvis that I had drawn out earlier, and I'm going to draw the same buckets underneath and also attempt to then draw the simplified pelvis within them. So here I'll start with the front view, and I'm trying to make this bucket the same size as the detailed view of the pelvis above. I'm approaching this the same way as I had done when I was drawing out all of the other buckets a moment ago. Okay, so now let's start drawing in the simplified pelvis. Before I do so, I need to give another shout out to Proco's video in which he shows you how to construct this simplified view inside the bucket. That's what I'm doing here. So when I had drawn this bucket, I had divided its top plane in half, and here I'm going to half that back half again, creating another line across its top plane. I now add 2 curves at either side between this line at the front that I had drawn when cutting out the wedge on the bucket and this line that I've just drawn. These 2 curved sections on top that I've just drawn represents the front half of the iliac crest, and the ends of the line at the back represents the peak of the iliac crest, which at that point drops down to the sacrum, which is what I'll find next. The top of the sacrum is 1/3 of the way down the back plane, around here. I observe the detailed view above to see the width of this sacrum, and then I connect it to the top of the iliac crest, having these drop down to the sacrum like so. I now add some lines which come down from those curved sections at the top, and find another point that is about 1/3 of the way down at the lower section of the bucket, and this will define the height of the cartilage. I can then draw in that V shape for the pubic arch, which remember is wider on a female. We are drawing a male pelvis here, but I did cover the differences in the previous video. This bottom section that curves around is the ischium, and I'll add these holes here at either side in the shape of a curved triangle. I'll draw in a circle that is an ellipse from this view for the acetabulum at either side. We'll only slightly see them, and this, remember, is the socket for the femur bone. Now here I go back up to the sacrum, and by again observing the detailed view above, I give this some thickness, and from the front of this I curve around some lines down to the pubic symphysis at the front, giving me the shape for the pelvic cavity. I can then draw in the rest of the sacrum, which curves down, and so that's the simplified pelvis on a front view. Now I'm going to draw this on the rest of these angles before drawing this on more angles in perspective. So here I'm going to draw this on a flat side view, and I construct the bucket first the same way as before, cutting out a wedge at the front. Now as I draw...
A ver, ¿cómo lo divide este?
I feel like everyone teaches shapes and boxes first, then anatomy. I tried that, I failed. So I rewrote the timeline and it changed everything. It took me way too long to realize this, but I was trying to build a body before I even understood what I was building. I wish I'd known this sooner, but here it is. Good construction isn't the starting point. It's what comes after you understand anatomy. What finally changed everything for me was seeing the body not as boxes, but as a living structure of bone and form. That clicked, and that's what I want to give you in this video. Why construction fails without anatomy. Construction isn't wrong by any means, but I found when it's used without anatomy knowledge, it becomes a guessing game. This is what it looked like for me. I distinctly remember every artist I came across who taught anatomy telling me the same thing. You can just simplify the body into shapes, like this, see? Then they would draw a cylinder that is tapered in the perfect way to resemble an arm or a leg. Like, okay, yes, that is awesome and looks to be way less effort than drawing each intricate muscle and tendon, so I truly see the practicality here, but in practice it just became really confusing and incredibly frustrating. I got stuck in a vicious loop of forcing myself to learn the simplified way first, then to put muscles and anatomy on top. And until I really understood the simplified construction, I told myself I wasn't quote-unquote ready for anatomy. Here's why that sucks real bad. Shapes feel disconnected. Without understanding the proper anatomical landmarks, it is hard to know where a shape starts and how it connects in space. It doesn't solve proportion or pose problems. In fact, it encourages proportion and pose problems. Having a lot of gaps present in simplified forms without knowing what those gaps represent and what goes inside them makes it easy to make everything way out of proportion. With all of this, it becomes way scarier than it should to approach poses with interesting foreshortening or dynamicness. Lastly, learning this way first promotes stiffness, not fluidity. Without anatomy, my construction was floating in space with no logic underneath. And even when learning some of the best construction methods out there that do show connections, it didn't help. This is because everything is built on a deep understanding of anatomy. Anatomy first, the foundation. Pretty much all the media I consumed as a young artist wanting to get good viewed anatomy as this massive obstacle that is present in all the art you love, but is best avoided because of how complicated it is. This really pushed me to pursuing anything other than directly learning anatomy, which, as I mentioned earlier, just led me to dying 9 million times. However, here's why understanding muscle groups, joints, and bone landmarks informs construction and unlocks so many amazing things. Studying anatomy builds gesture intuition, understanding of shapes in space, proportional awareness, and simplified anatomy or construction. Once I understood what was under the surface, I could finally feel the figure, not just draw it. More importantly, I could draw it, from any angle, in any pose, and from imagination. If I could do it all over, here's what I would do to get me on the fastest track to what I have achieved, starting with proportion. My proportion method. I never resonated with the 7 heads tall thing because I couldn't draw a single head back then, and 7 of them was too many. Anyway, here's what I keep in mind now to maintain proportion in every drawing or painting. I practice the proportion teachings of Will Weston. I love his direct approach to it all, and it really resonated with me because he uses hands and fingers as measurement markers. I have pages of his simplifications that you can view right now on my Discord, link below. Here are the key takeaways that I directly took to form my simplified Willy. Starting up top, 1 hand length from the top of your head down is the point of your nose. 1 hand length from the point of your nose is where the sternum starts. From that point, 1 hand length down is where the sternum ends. 1 hand length diagonally from both sides is where the rib cage ends. 1 hand length down from those points are where the hips start. This is the very big one, very important. 3 fingers down from that point is what's known as the 3-finger gap. This is a very important landmark that dictates where the leg starts. From the top of the hips, 1 hand length down is the base of the pelvis. With all of that, from the top of the head to the base of the pelvis is half of the whole entire body. If we go back up to the top of the sternum, 1 hand length to either side is the length of the clavicles. The top arm bone ends at the base of the rib cage, the bottom arm bones end at the base of the pelvis. 1 hand ends 1 hand length down from that. Real quick, for the scapulas, they are about the same size as the sternum, so 1 hand length. This, to be honest, is all I use for the most part. I didn't even know this prior to making the video, but counting down to the top of the knee is roughly 1/2 of the head, and the top of the foot is roughly 1/3 of the head. With all that, you got your basic proportions. By the way, I didn't ever practice drawing a map like this over and over to solidify proportions. As such, I feel they are much better understood through gesture and repetition that way. Bonus tip, think of proportion as a relationship, not a measurement. I remember being absolutely paralyzed by measurements, like the specific degree the ribcage hand length line should be at, and that really made it so much more taxing for me. It's important to remember it's art, not math. And the more you do this over and over with an exercise like gesture drawing, it becomes a lot simpler to just intuitively know the angle these lines should be at. My construction method, head to toe. With proportion out of the way, here's my construction method that I have developed from learning anatomy. Important thing to keep in mind, especially for beginners, these look the way they do because I know the muscles and bone structures that they represent. It is anatomy-aware sketching. As stated earlier, I don't think shorthand like this should be a thing to practice before learning anatomy. These are just to showcase how I now think about the figure, not a direct tutorial how to construct one or the place to start. With that said, I do believe there is value to seeing demonstrations like this, especially with the core perspective of this whole video in mind. AKA, this is the end result, not a starting point. That's all just stuff I would tell my younger self, by the way, in efforts to avoid pitfalls and fast-track learning. But if something here does look cool or fun to try regardless of skill level, then please go for it. Alright, head and neck. I start with an oval first, then mark the horizontal line that loosely follows the form of the head. From here I draw this to indicate the eye sockets. With both of those established, I draw this arc connecting the two to mark the front plane. From the bottom points, I go down to the chin. Somewhere in there is the jowls too. From here I mark the eyes, nose, and mouth, then the ears to finish the general shape of the head using the planes I establish as guides. Lightly erase this bad boy and draw the nice stuff on top, and that's about it. This is my simplified version of Will Weston's pinhead looking thing here. And that thing looks very complicated and scary, but honestly is so helpful and makes it possible to draw anyone's face. Learning this and getting comfortable with it eventually led me to really pushing features and making for more anime-ish expressions while ensuring I can maintain those features in any angle. Again, all this good stuff will be linked down below in the description, and it's available for free in my Discord. On to the neck. That thing is just a cylinder. One weird thing to keep in mind is that the neck is larger up top than it is on the bottom, which feels unstable but looks right somehow. On both sides, connecting from pretty much the ears, are the sternocleidomastoid muscles. These connect right to the sternum and are excellent landmarks. With the head and neck done, let's now go from none to nuts. For the ribcage, I draw this egg-shaped oval. From here, I draw a smaller circle at the top to establish the front plane as well as the neck hole. This is where the neck tube goes. From the neck hole, I draw this rectangle that is 1 hand length down to establish the sternum. From here, I draw the diagonal 1-hand lines to create this pistachio shell looking shape. As you can imagine, this sounds like a cool hack, but in practice it gets weird, especially when you put it in perspective. As a beginner, I think this basic pistachio shell is a great starting point because it addresses a lot of the important landmarks that you can then put muscles on top of without worrying about the craziness of the rib bones. From the top of the sternum, we have the collarbones. These are basically like straight lightning bolts. I've heard them been called bicycle handlebars too, but that makes me feel weird, so anyway, they're about 1 hand length long and protrude outwards. All the bends within this shape are incredible landmarks where muscles like the deltoids and pectoralis attach. Flipping this around, let's talk about the scapula. It is roughly aligned with where the sternum starts and ends as well. To indicate the spine, I draw these 2 lines that make for the shaft of this arrow, the point of which becomes the sacrum. With that done, let's go on to the pelvis. So about 1 hand length down from the end of the ribcage, I draw a rectangular box to represent the entire pelvis. At the front, I mark the 3-finger gap with these diagonal lines. On the back, we connect that arrow shape. Super cool thing with this is that right in the middle of either side of this box is the acetabulum, or the socket where the femur attaches. This is all I really need to know to move forward when constructing figures, though the pelvis is a very spicy bone to learn, When learning anatomy within this section, I remember trying to keep it all contained in a box, and it was pretty much just torture. In fact, when I was drawing for this video, I still had difficulty doing that. Instead, for studying the anatomy here, I recommend it would be a lot easier to draw the whole pelvis a lot from different angles and slowly map the important landmarks onto the box. Eventually this started to make sense, and the simplification became a viable asset. Now let's move on to arms and legs. For the arms, I mark out the 3 muscles that make up the entire deltoid pretty roughly. With all of our simplified shapes established, starting from this point of the collarbone is the front delt. The acromion process marks the top delt, and the top of the back of the scapula is the rear delt. Then I draw a tube that slowly starts about halfway through the deltoids and ends at the base of the ribcage. I leave a small gap for the condyles and the elbow stuff, and then draw a similar shape for the forearm. The ulna, or elbow bone, connects from the pinky side and goes all the way up this tube and forms the elbow. I use this to establish a plane that then gives the forearm a plank of wood kind of shape. For the legs, the thigh starts at the base of the 3-finger gap. This gap is where muscles like the sartorius and rectus femoris attach, which make for the starting point of the leg. I simplify all the muscles within this as a tapered tube, then leave space for the knee stuff, and make a similar tapered tube for the other part of the leg. See what I mean, by the way? Like, when I'm explaining all of this, I'm kind of proving my point. Like, there's so much missing information in the way that I simplify stuff that I really believe that if you were to learn this way, it would be pretty damaging. Also, it's totally fair that this raises so many more questions than any answers it will give, but to keep it transparent, I really want to provide the exact construction method that I use every day when I sketch and paint, and here it is. Okay, now on to hands and feet. For hands, following the established planes of the forearm, I draw the palm, which is pretty much just a square paddle thing. This paddle gives me the planes I need to keep the fingers in the proper perspective, which I simplify as tubes. Something I like to do as well is use the top of the nails to solidify the top plane of each finger. This ensures that everything is in the proper perspective and it gives the fingers form. For the feet, I like to extend like the Achilles tendon and draw this trapezoidal triangle thing, and this kind of gives me the plane of the back of the heel. And from here I could then draw this little arch shape that connects the whole arch of the foot. And for the toes, I divide it into 3 little bits, and it's kind of like, I don't know, like a dog paw or something. And basically in each one of these little bits is going to be 2 toes. And then you got the big toe as well, so it totals out to 5 toes exactly. How it all changed my art. All the above was meant to share and showcase where I am now in my journey. Simplified anatomy like this is something I remember viewing as sought after and highly valued. And to be honest, it's worth the hype. When I sketch or do gesture work, I'm using my simplified method to quickly get down all the key information of each pose. When I'm drawing from imagination, I can manipulate these shapes in space and create and solve unique problems. As you can imagine, this brought a great shift in confidence and clarity, but it was also really frustrating trying to learn and be comfortable with all of this without any anatomy knowledge. For a bit of a mic drop, this is the first time I've ever practiced and dedicated sessions to drawing simplified forms since my days years ago of trying to do this first. Here's an example of one of my sessions before I knew any anatomy, and here is now. What was placed within that gap wasn't a constant practice of simplified forms, but rather actual anatomical study and gesture work to solidify construction and confidence. That carried me to be able to draw simplified figures for this video, which I bring up again to solidify my point with the timeline being backwards. I feel like a lot of us look to structured curriculum to solve or achieve goals. It is comprehensible to go from like Algebra 1 to Algebra 2 and then move on to calculus, etc. But I feel like categorizing learning in a timeline structure like this can actually inhibit progress, especially when it comes to something so unique and personal like art. It took me challenging this timeline to actually see results, alleviate frustration, and actually start moving again. Bonus, I ended up falling in love with drawing and art in general, and just all this cool stuff happened. I want to suggest something that I wish I had heard from experienced artists when I was going through it. That is to learn the way that you learn. Do what makes the most sense for you, or what feels right and exciting. If some course out there claims that it will give you the results you seek, but it feels like torture every time you do it, there is most likely a better way. But also don't mistake discomfort for agony. Discomfort is where growth begins. It feels scary, maybe frustrating, but it rewards you. Every time you push through, your comfort zone expands, and you unlock more ease, more confidence, more joy. Agony, on the other hand, drains you. No matter how hard you push, it feels like you're sinking deeper. Progress doesn't feel empowering, it feels punishing. That's not growth, that's a signal to rest, reset, or redirect. Listen to that. and you'll learn to tell the difference, because one leads to progress and the other leads to burnout. Before we wrap it up, I am here to announce the winners for the monthly art contest. March was all about a rain of emotions. The challenge was to feature an original character flooded with an emotion of your choice, using the background colors to really enforce and push this emotion. In third place, we have Izini with this incredible rollerblader illustration, and it's so cool. The composition here is what really caught my eye in the first place. How the pink and the blue little like wispy bits go straight to this character's eye, and then even like the rollerblade goes to the hair, and the hair brings you back to the eye. It's so well done. It really captures this like youthful and energetic, like punky kind of feel to it. Beautiful work. In second place, we have Samuki with this incredibly raw and emotional piece. It's got like a little bit of John Wickness to it, like this character's puppy just passed away and he's about to just absolutely obliterate everybody who dares to point a spear at him. Really well done. In first place, we have Semta with this just stunning, amazing piece. I really love how just you can use a tiny bit of colors to really enforce the emotion here. It's like this character is being just like about to be entangled with chains or even breaking out of chains and just screaming up into the void and just like full of so much anger, sadness, agony, pain, torment, rage. Like, oh god, it's so good. Really love this piece. All of these artist links will be down in the description below, by the way, so please go support and check out their work. If you would like to partake in these monthly challenges or participate in art skill building things like the 6-month gesture routine with hundreds of others, then join the Discord Art Castle below. We're already over 3K members, and it is so amazing seeing how many people here are finding new friends and having just like this amazing positive sense. How overwhelming and discouraging that journey can be. I found a study method that completely transformed my anatomy skills in just 6 months. And the best part? It's actually fun and easy to stick to. Here's exactly what I did and still do to this day. This is a fresh and straightforward study method that was born from many personal realizations alongside valuable insights from professional artists. It's designed for anyone who wants to improve their anatomy but feels so lost on where to begin. Trust me, I know exactly how overwhelming and discouraging that journey can be. Which leads me to my first point, the problem with traditional anatomy learning. Anatomy is free, fluid, and beautifully complex. It's a living, breathing system with tiny parts constantly working in harmony. But when you pair this organic, intricate masterpiece with a rigid textbook or a video packed with rules and oversimplifications that are actually more complex than the body part itself is, it stifles creativity and makes the whole process feel like a stressful, inaccessible maze. Being self-taught, I faced this everywhere I went to learn anatomy. I have tried and really studied the Proco bucket, for example, but after weeks of drawing those goddamn buckets, I never got it quite right. I even bought stacks of art books, each one with like 300 plus pages that dive deep into perspective, composition, and of course anatomy. But no matter how much I copied, traced, highlighted big fancy words and tried to decode them, none of it clicked. Like, what even is Gestalt, and why does ambient occlusion sound like a disease? I still don't know, and honestly, I never needed to. It's not surprising then to hear that I do not learn best academically. In fact, the word school makes me want to fart. Textbooks and all this descriptive jargon for something like art that by nature is felt, visual, and creative really muddied the waters for me and kind of just pissed me off. It was around this time when I made a huge realization that I learn best intuitively, with the foundation of this intuitive learning being rooted in creativity rather than traditional academic studying and big fancy words. Also, I'm aware that people retain and learn best through different means, and that art books with more text than art are genuinely helpful for some. But for me, it was like looking at the insides of a jet engine and being asked at gunpoint which part is used to make smoothies. And if you ever felt the same way, here are my 4 key elements of this routine that completely solved all of this and got me out of that maze. Element 1. This is literally the backbone of the entire anatomy routine, so it's crucial and unskippable. That is drawing 60 1-minute gesture drawings every single day for the entirety of the 6 months. This is so critical, in fact, that I made a whole video on it, which you can find in the description below. This works great for anatomy for 2 simple reasons. It slowly familiarizes you with the specific fundamentals that are key for good anatomy. Those being proportion, construction, rhythm, and perspective. Second is that it forces you to draw poses that are varied and dynamic. It puts you face to face with how these muscle groups look like from different angles and how they work with one another. It puts you face to. Second, anatomy. Those being proportion, construction, rhythm, and perspective. Second is that it forces you to draw poses that are varied and dynamic. It puts you face to face with how these muscle groups look like from different angles and how they work with one another. It doesn't matter if each gesture is ugly or wrong. Do it for 1 hour every single day for 6 months, and this will work as a passive, slowly helping you understand all of this. Also, a gesture or transfer of energy is how every single drawing, painting, and study, or literally whatever starts. It's all gesture. So as you can imagine, getting good at gesture drawing means you literally get good at drawing anything, and that includes different muscle groups and anatomy. Element 2. This is where we start to get into the actual anatomy studying, but first here are the two main resources that were and still are my sword and shield. The first one being a book called Morpho Anatomy for Artists. Unlike most anatomy books, this one gets straight to the point with no confusing simplifications or text. It's just drawings, really good drawings of anatomy and muscle breakdowns. The second source is a 3D medical anatomy program for doctors or something that I found online called Complete Anatomy by 3D4 Medical. This one at the time of recording is around $40 USD for a 1-year subscription, but this was honestly non-negotiable for me when it came to really understanding where each individual muscle connects to the bone and overlaps with others. Having a 3D tool where you can move to see every single angle of each muscle and remove muscles that are in the way with what you are actively studying was really what made those clicks happen more frequently for me. I have tried free ones online, but they didn't align with what was in the Morpho books, so I opted for this one. And quite honestly, this is still an amazing tool that I've been using during this whole video. Element 3, active learning. Once I had my sources ready and loaded, I would find a pose online or take a gesture that I liked a lot that day, and use my tools to then draw the anatomy within the gesture. At first, I chose one muscle group, like arms, and I would sketch the gesture of that arm from a pose, then use my tools to draw the anatomy within it. Using a pose that I was already interested in helped me keep the motivation to get each muscle down as best as I could, even if at first I had no clue what I was looking at. I would do this for as many poses as I felt like, but only for 1 hour a day, and I did this sporadically within the 6 months. At most, I did this 7 days a week, but there were periods where I only did this 2 to 3 days a week. In general though, I made sure to study anatomy like this at least twice a week. Breaking down entire muscle groups like arms, legs, front, back into smaller manageable chunks helped me simplify the whole process. Whenever I encountered a muscle I didn't fully understand, where it connected, what it attached to, or how it functioned, I'd focus solely on that one muscle. For example, if I was studying legs and had an issue, I'd isolate a single muscle and dive deep into the points on the bone that it connected to, in order to explore all the various angles that were necessary in order to help me grasp it fully. This gave me a comprehensive structure to follow that cut all the bucket crap and went straight into it all. Doing this on dynamic figures or poses kept it all interesting, and gave me real practical application that far beat out drawing each muscle in a static position over and over again. Each week or day I would go into a new chunk. I didn't have a rigid structure, it was all based on if I was tired of that chunk or not. For example, I remember really getting into legs and stayed studying only legs for 1 or 2 of the entire 6 months. Other times I would study core for 1 day, get tired of it, switch to back the next day. I made sure to always prioritize what I was feeling the most interested in, not what I felt like I should be learning. Your first time drawing arms like this, for example, will be whack daddy, but the more you do it, the intricate things you once thought to be impossible to comprehend suddenly start to make the most beautiful and poetic sense. Also, drawing anatomy on poses that interest you already challenges you each time, which is why growth happens so quick with this too. You are constantly going to be pushed past your comfort zone, and it familiarizes you with poses that you want to learn how to draw in the first place. Also, when you compound studying like this with the 1 hour gesture drawings, you're going to see just how well these two study methods complement each other. Each time you get a better understanding of anatomy, your gesture drawings are going to improve. And each time your gesture drawings get better, your anatomy studies are going to look more full, rich, and three-dimensional. It seriously just becomes a giant snowball of improvement that gets out of control so quickly. And even on the bad days of gesture drawing and anatomy studies, it doesn't matter. Because you're doing two things that complement each other, you're going to get better. And better quicker. Gesture drawings also do something incredibly awesome, especially for beginners, that I've never heard anybody else talk about. It's that they give you a solid foundation on how to draw in general. This, quite honestly, if you were to take away anything from this video, is the most important thing. Every textbook that I've read and every art source out there that is free, even the paid for ones too, to be honest, they gloss over that fact. A lot of it assumes that you already have the knowledge to draw or sketch, and for me, that was not the case. So doing the gesture drawings over and over again got me familiar with how to draw and approach the anatomy studies. So once I knew how to draw, or how I draw, then I was able to start studying effectively. Nobody else talks about that. They're all just like, here's a cool way to draw the hip area. It's a bucket. And then it's like, well, how the fuck do I draw this bucket, dude? Oh my god. I want to emphasize that it is paramount to learn from interest and joy, rather than necessity and stress. There were times that I forced it and drew pages of hands or feet when I did not want to. All that did was burn out my nervous system and made it harder to retain the information I was desperately trying to absorb. This is why I ended up pivoting from doing this every day along with the 1-hour gestures, and did it more sporadically. Studying anatomy is more taxing than looking at a pose and drawing it for 1 minute. Your brain works way harder actively understanding the relationships between muscle groups. As such, it is a very easy way to burn out if you push it. That being said, during this time, I pushed it a lot. I never felt frustrated even when I was not improving as fast because I was fried. This is because of the 1 step back, 2 steps forwards mantra I had installed. Regardless of your mental state during this, it is fact that sleep and rest is vital when you're learning a new skill. Neuroplasticity and all that. So seriously, drink water, eat, and sleep. You'll get better at drawing faster if you do this. Lastly, if you do face frustration with this, keep at it. I failed daily and still fail daily. Every bad
Es que qué gato. Ay, pero qué gato tan guapo. Ay, Dios mío. No me vaya a morder. Venga, salga que yo lo conozco, que usted entra para luego decir, déjeme salir. Dios. Olé. Listo. ¿Ves la que está diciendo este tipo?
And occlusion sound like a disease. I still don't know, and honestly, I never needed to. It's not surprising then to hear that I do not learn best academically. In fact, the word school makes me want to fart. Textbooks and all this descriptive jargon for something like art that by nature is felt, visual, and creative really muddied the waters for me and kind of just pissed me off. It was around this time when I made a huge realization that I learned best intuitively, with the foundation of this intuitive learning being rooted in creativity rather than traditional academic studying and big fancy words. Also, I'm aware that people retain and learn best through different means, and that art books with more text than art are genuinely helpful for some. But for me, it was like looking at the insides of a jet engine and being asked at gunpoint which part is used to make smoothies. And if you ever felt the same way, here are my 4 key elements of this routine that completely solved all of this and got me out of that maze. Element 1. This is literally the backbone of the entire anatomy routine, so it's crucial and unskippable. That is drawing 60 1-minute gesture drawings every single day for the entirety of the 6 months. This is so critical, in fact, that I made a whole video on it, which you can find in the description below. This works great for anatomy for 2 simple reasons. It slowly familiarizes you with the specific fundamentals that are key for good anatomy, those being proportion, construction, rhythm, and perspective. Second is that it forces you to draw poses that are varied and dynamic. It puts you face to face with how these muscle groups look like from different angles and how they work with one another. It doesn't matter if each gesture is ugly or wrong. Do it for 1 hour every single day for 6 months, and this will work as a passive, slowly helping you understand all of this. Also, a gesture or transfer of energy is how every single drawing, painting, and study, or literally whatever starts. It's all gesture. So as you can imagine, getting good at gesture drawing means you literally get good at drawing anything, and that includes different muscle groups and anatomy. Element 2. This is where we start to get into the actual anatomy studying, but first here are the 2 main resources that were and still are my sword and shield. The first one being a book called Morpho Anatomy for Artists. Unlike most anatomy books, this one gets straight to the point with no confusing simplifications or text. It's just drawings, really good drawings of anatomy and muscle breakdowns. The second source is a 3D medical anatomy program for doctors or something that I angle of each. This is ready and loaded. I would find a pose online or take a gesture that I liked a lot. That first I chose to get each. I would do 6 months.
Más por gesture. A ver. Esto me deja ver las estadísticas. De hecho, the bucket.
And general shapes, right? For the rib, tilted back a little, so the torso naturally has an arch to it like this. I used to avoid drawing turnarounds like this because it was kind of most of the basic shapes. I found that having actually draw the figure, I found that having learned, and that makes our figure drawing more box of extends. them on the ground. And again, we can
Era un tercio hacia adelante, si no estoy mal. Y esto va hasta la mitad, que es como por acá. Pero no sería más fácil con una caja. Espérate. No, creo que entiendo por qué ya lo hacen con el cubo este. Es más fácil simplificarlo con un cubo que con una caja. Que me imagino que luego puedo venir y meter el cubo en una caja. Dios. Ay, será necesaria mucha vitamina C. Ok, primero tendré que dibujarlo simple. Bien. Si lo cortan así recto. Ajá, sí. Ahora esperadme, ya vuelvo.